Well, welcome everybody. Hello to you, no matter what time zone you're in and what country you're in. It's good to have you all with us again. I was informed that the slides look different today. There's some on the bottom. I don't know why, not sure how to get rid of that. So just bear with me. We'll just try to focus on those slides in the big screen. This is the final session of the community practice for this year, this spring. And I want to again give a really great thanks to all the people, all the organizations that have co-sponsored this session, and many of you are members of that. So thank you very much for doing that. And as this is the final session, I just want to reiterate the core message that we've been trying to share. That is that community is the medicine we need. We're going to talk more about this today a little bit, but we've got some very, very serious challenges ahead of us, as you all know. We're in the midst of them now, and many more coming our way. And it's only by banding together in groups that humans throughout history have really found ways to respond creatively to those questions and solve complex problems. And we can do this again now. Even though what is already happening and what's coming our way can be very distressing, I think if we use it as an opportunity for transformation, it can really, we can solve these complex problems and really increase well-being. So again, just want to pass on to remember that if trauma can be passed down through generations, historical and intergenerational traumas that have been happening, we can also do the same with healing and transformational resilience, and that's our mission. But I think it's going to require, among other things, it's going to really require that focus on community-based work. So just to give a one final overview of what we've done through the community practice, and I want to emphasize that we've gone through these steps literally by session, but the process that most of the community resilience building initiatives use, many of which you've heard from, is not iterative like this. It's not linear, it's iterative. The organizations take one step, then they go back and they revise the previous step. They continue to grow and learn as they go through the process. But we started off with an overview. Then we talked about how to organize a resilience coordinating network, and you heard from a couple of people who've done that. And then we talked about how to begin building community resilience by either helping traumatized communities begin to heal, or organizing asset-based mapping and community resilience profiling. And in there, we held a special session just on these issues for mental health and human services professionals. Then we went through sessions 4 through 8, focused on different elements, the different core focuses of what these resilience initiatives need to focus on to address the climate emergency. And we had a special session on working with youth. And then last session, we talked about how to initiate these organize these things by hearing from the panel of community leaders involved with these issues. Reb McKenzie made a really great presentation about her project. We focused on action planning. Then last Thursday, we ran a really fun, interesting special section on the role of public agencies. And today we're going to try to recap this, do a lot of sharing and discussion about how you can move forward, what your ideas is, and then we're going to conclude by talking about the commissioning program that we're going to launch in the fall, but are starting now. So as before, let's just start with a short resilience pause. And I do this in these sessions because it helps us get grounded, get centered, able to absorb information and think about it, but also so you can learn how you can share this with others. See if your resilience coordinating network that you are involved with or get involved with, or your organization or your group can do something similar in an age and culturally appropriate way. But so if this makes sense to you, if it resonates with you, you might want to just sort of observe yourself objectively just for a moment. What are you experiencing right now in your body, in your mind, in your emotions? Just sort of notice that. This is a very, very helpful way to begin the presencing or self-regulation process. So just take a moment to do that. Other tensions in your body, heat, anything else going on? Is your mind racing or is it calm? Do you feel anxious or do you feel uh, really good? Just what's going on right now, without a good or bad, no right or wrong. Just notice that. And as you continue to do that, let's practice the magic wand of resilience, as I call it. So imagine that you just found a magic wand. Somebody gave it to you, excuse me, that allows you to change three things in the here and now, right now, not in the past, not in the future, but three things right now related to your thinking and how you behave and respond to situations. What three things would you change about the way you deal with stress and adversity today, right now? Can you think of one, two, or three things you can change, you would like to change? If you had a magic wand, what would you change about how you deal with stress and adversity right now, today? If you want to, please just write it down. Certainly take a mental note of it. Would you take more time to think about something before you react? What would you do? And then sort of flesh it out a bit. If you can identify a few things you do differently, maybe there isn't anything, maybe you feel like you're handling it really well. But if there is some things you'd like to change to deal with stress and adversity, what are they and why would that be beneficial to you? Why would it be important to you? See if you can just flesh that out, write it down if it's possible. And so with that in mind, now imagine that you're always completely resilient. You never get flustered. You have very good self-regulation skills. You also are able to learn and grow from adversities. If you are always completely resilient, how would you be different than what you are today? What, if anything, would change within you? And now just think about, can you imagine a way to help people in your neighborhood and resilience and community make similar changes? Would that be possible? Can you imagine a way to make that happen? So always sort of keep with you the magic wand of resilience, thinking about how would I ideally like to live my life in the midst of adversities. That's really what this is about. How would I like to live my life without harming myself, harming others, harming the natural environment, and in fact, use adversities as catalysts to find new meaning, purpose, and hope? Be very, very powerful. Where none of us are perfect. We're never going to do it right all the time. But the more we can keep that vision in mind, that sense of what we're trying to do, the better. So we're going to do breakout rooms now. We're going to do a little longer breakout room this time than we have in the past. But just if you would, in one word, share how you're feeling now in the present moment. What you took away from the panel of community leaders from that talked last week, but from the presentation of Rev. McKenzie, the initial action planning and or the special session on the role of public agencies, if you attended that. And if you did expand your initial action plan to form a planning team for organizing Resilience Coordinating Network, what'd you come up with? How was that? what came. And then if you would post any questions and comments that emerge in chat. So you'll have a little more time to talk about that today. And I'm going to turn it back over to Jesse and he will organize the breakout rooms. See you in a few minutes. Bye-bye.
All right, everyone. We'll have 12-minute breakout rooms. You'll see the timer in the top right. We look forward to seeing everybody back here in 12 and a half minutes.
Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a good time to chat. If anybody has any particular comments that stood out or questions, can you post them in chat right now very quickly? And Christian will just read a few. So see if anything pops up there. Any pressing issues, any very relevant questions or issues that popped up? Anything showing up there?
Excellent. Yeah, we have some folks saying they discussed how important it is to start small. Another folks said they shared a lot about resilience hubs or place-based strategies that may be small or mighty. So loving that incremental kind of energy here. Participants saying it doesn't have to be about climate. A question, how do we address desensitization, excuse me, of the concepts of trauma, resilience, and innovation? Maybe being desensitized to these concepts of trauma, resilience, and innovation. Great question. Another participant, we had an interesting conversation about the overuse of some terms like resilience and trauma. So maybe tying into that desensitization piece. And then someone just naming that we are talking a lot about resilience hubs. They're really taking off all over the country. There is so much overlap with this work. Agreed. I was really hoping that this series could share more about this concept, that being resilience hubs. Someone naming that they're feeling scattered amongst all the projects we are doing a lot, and yet part of this work is finding the pause and spaciousness. Feeling positive when we are able to bring things to the community and out of planning. Very, very important.
Okay. Those are great points, great questions. Let's save those questions and talk about them and have a group conversation. So all of you who are with us, think about how you would respond to those questions and be ready to share that in a few minutes here. How would you desensitize? I think I got that right. Talking about resilience and trauma, et cetera, and not overuse it. Other ways you can describe those issues. And the other questions that we heard. Those are very good points. Thank you all for sharing that. So I want to now just do a real brief recap of what we've talked about during what we focused on during the community practice. And the big picture, of course, is that we've got to come to grips with the reality that we're in the initial stages of a very rapidly accelerating, what I call climate ecosystem biodiversity catastrophe. And by catastrophe, what I mean is using the disaster sociology definition of catastrophe, meaning it has multiple impacts, multiple consequences that interact among each other, affects many different kind of groups. There's no simple solution, and often the adversities don't end quickly and give people time to recover, which is what we normally think of a disaster. It continues on. There's a significant impact that it's followed by a toxic stress or stresses of many kinds, and then back the other way. So that's what we mean. And this is already and will increasingly affect every aspect of society. This is not just some other environmental issues, just some distressing but real news that we all have to get our heads around. Last year was the hottest in recorded history. And the first time ever, global temperatures rose by 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit, 1.5 Celsius above pre-industrial levels for the entire year. And the pattern has continued. This last month, March, was the hottest in recorded history. Just as a sidebar, it's hard to get our heads around that because that means it's heat in the south in the winter if you're living in the north, and it's averaged out to the north. And we say, well, it's winter up here. How can it be the hottest? It's those averages that they're looking at. But last year, records were also broken for ocean heat, sea level rise, melting of glaciers, Antarctic sea level loss. And I just read yesterday about bleaching in the oceans, coral reefs, et cetera, going on right now. And the World Economic Forum, the economic group, of the people that get together to talk about how to make money, last year said biodiversity loss and ecosystem collapse are now among the top 5 risks facing the world. And global emissions continue to rise. They hit a record level last year. They're not going down. And that our use of clean energy technologies, cars, solar, et cetera, is actually just preventing a higher increase. It's not reducing emissions yet. I think over time it can, but right now it's just preventing even a higher risk. So we really have to prepare for persistent stresses, not just traumas. I look online at different news sites in the morning, and this morning there's a really good article called "We Don't See What Climate Change is Doing to Us" in the New York Times. And it describes how toxic stresses, or what he calls hidden costs or non-catastrophic warming, will have greater impacts than these acute disasters, and that local preparedness and adaptation is key. And you can get the link to it. You can look it up. It's really a very well written article, and it really starts to, and he talks about the fact the research is just emerging on this, but it's very clear that, yeah, we've got to deal with disasters, but which is what we've mostly focused on, and he talks about that. That's what the researchers focus on, but we've got to really address these other issues, the hidden costs, as he calls it, or non-catastrophic warming. So many of us are consumed by other pressing issues, and we fail to grasp or get prepared for all this. And many of the people you work with are that way. They're just trying to get food on the table. A group I was talking with yesterday in North Carolina, they're just dealing with racism all the time. How do we think about climate change? It's just another issue. But we have to understand and also add to what we're doing in some ways, that the disasters and toxic stresses are already and will increasingly create an epidemic of individual, community, and societal traumas. This is what is speeding our way. So if we keep our eye on that, we can maybe address those issues while we're dealing with the everyday issues of making sure food and water are on the table, et cetera. And what we also focused on is that while important, mental health treatments and direct human services, again, while very important, they cannot address these problems. We cannot just treat individuals after they're traumatized. We can't just keep trying to react to the next disaster and maybe provide disaster mental health services, or hope that hardening external physical infrastructure is going to be sufficient. 2 weeks ago, and maybe it's 3 weeks ago now, I was sat in on a presentation by the new director of the Federal Emergency Management Association, FEMA, who talked about they're now focused, they've expanded their work to focus on community resilience. They have not done that in the past. But by that, she meant external physical resilience, strengthening buildings, the location and the construction of buildings, water and power systems and transportation systems, et cetera. There wasn't one mention about the human dimensions of resilience in her work. We now actually are having a conversation with them about that. But to believe that that's going to be the solution is very, very risky. And the reason is that the climate system is changing, and it's been disrupted in ways that are very surprising. We've never seen it before. The models that we have, the computer models, et cetera, that project what the impacts are going to be, where they're going to be, the intensity of the impacts, they're continuing to improve, but we're never going to be able to actually precisely project the exact location, timing, magnitude, et cetera, of these impacts. So much of the infrastructure work we should expect will have limited effects, and some is likely to fail while being very expensive. But what we can do is proactively help people prepare for what's coming, and that is proactively build population level transformation resilience. And what do I mean by that? We've talked about that a number of times, but just to recap again, in Western psychology and psychiatry, my training in that also, we're grounded in preparing professionals, et cetera, in a deficit-based model. We're trying to fix what's broken and focus on pathology. But in contrast, building transformational resilience or resilience in general is focused on a strength-based approach. It seeks to identify and maximize our social connections, our skills, our resources, strength, and other assets with the goal of preventing problems before they occur and using those assets to also help people recover when they do, heal when they do. And the way we've defined it, but you can define it any way you want, is one key is going to be self-regulation skills. We call them presencing skills. But those skills can be personal skills, but those social connections are also critical. Getting involved with activities that help you find purpose and meaning in life is also important, et cetera. So there's presencing or self-regulation skills and also purposing skills. That is the ability to find meaning, direction, and hope and courage in the middle of adversities. And we know how to do this. Groups are doing it. Community initiatives are doing it around many parts of the world. The question is, can we really accelerate this and really raise it up and really integrate it into our program? So it really is building on programs working on adverse childhood experiences, for example, to build resilience so people do not abuse their children or neglect their children, but also help them build resilience for these other stresses and traumas that are coming their way. So the real question that we're asking in this community practice is, how do we help people find a way to live their life in a very healthy, hopeful, purposeful way in the midst of ongoing adversities? And how can you help your community members do that? Well, what we've talked about and what you've heard from a number of other presenters is that building population level mental wellness really requires addressing those interactive individual, family, community, structural issues, economic, social, ecological factors together. It's got to be a multi-systemic approach, as we called it. And this requires a public health approach to mental wellness and transformational resilience. So a public health approach takes a population level approach, just like any other public health approach. When we had the pandemic, we just didn't focus on people who might be more at risk of the disease. They were included in a much broader thing. Let's get everybody immunized, or as many as we can, and then also focus on those. So this is accomplished by using proportionate universalism, which just as I described, addresses those groups that are more at risk or already having problems, but they are part of a much broader population level approach and a life course approach. And what that means is different approaches for different age groups. So our mantra really has to be leave no one behind. A public health approach to mental wellness, transformational resilience, but prioritizes preventing mental health problems before they emerge. That's the top priority, not merely reacting to or treating them after they appear. And it integrates group and community-minded healing methods into the prevention strategies. So we really have to remember all the time that prevention is the cure. Think about that when you're organizing programs in your community of any kind, whether it's resilience building or anything. Are you focusing on prevention, or are you just reacting to the next crisis? That's very important, but can you move into a prevention focus? And it accomplishes those goals by strengthening what's called protective factors, the social connections and supports that protect people from traumas and help people recover, the presencing and purposing resilience skills I just talked about, local resources and assets, engaging in pro-social activities, all those 5 areas that I'm going to talk about in a second, that we know and research and experience shows builds sustainable, builds and sustains healthy thinking and behaviors. Again, not just reacting to disasters or treating symptoms of pathology. We must build strengths, build social connections, and build resources. And research, and as you've heard from many presenters throughout the community practice, show that that ample experience shows that we can enhance mental wellness and transformation resilience. And the most effective way to do so is to establish the horizontal social infrastructure in communities, meaning not a top-down approach from experts or one organization on their own, that we call a resilience coordinating network. Sometimes they're called resilience steering committees. There's lots of different names for them, but that's the core idea. And they engage a broad and diverse array of grassroots, neighborhood, and voluntary leaders, civic groups, nonprofit, public, and private agencies, and jointly planning and implementing, continually improving multi-systemic strategies to deal with all of those issues we talked about that strengthen as many protective factors as possible in the community. And as we've heard, this is a sample ideal resilience coordinating network using what, well-coordinated decentralization or a hub and spoke approach. Groups are working with different populations, different sectors, but they come back and they share their strategies, what they're doing. They get feedback from others. They coordinate fundraising on this, et cetera. And they make sure they're dealing with the entire population. The New Hanover County Resilience Task Force is one of the leaders in this. And actually, this diagram is really based on their work. So it's happening out there. And you start small, though, and you have to grow up to that. But we must continually collaborate in new and expanded ways for many of us to respond to what's coming our way. So just to recap the 5 areas, our research, we completed what we thought was going to be 6 months, went on for about 1.5 years research project where they had a bunch of people looking all over the world, talking to folks, reading research. I had the opportunity to talk personally with people in many countries, asking the question, do you have a way, do you have a model, an approach that can prevent and heal mental health and psychosocial problems generated by ongoing relentless adversities? And it turns out we do know it is that public health approach. In middle and lower income countries, it's called a mental health and psychosocial support group approach, but it's very similar. And here's by far the most important focus that we've determined and we found is to build those social connections across cultural, economic, racial, and geographic boundaries in the community. Again, bonding social support networks are the close friends and family, bridging or connections between your close friends and families and neighbors and others. And linking those networks with agencies and organizations that have political power, economic power, et cetera, et cetera. There's some, I haven't updated this research. I'm sure that we could. Back in 2002, the Boston Globe said the new report highlights the importance of social connections in climate resilience. And we didn't get a chance to hear much from Howard Lawrence. He somehow couldn't make it that day when we talked about examples of how to build social connections. But in Alberta, Canada, Edmonton, Canada, their program actually develops, identifies and trains block connectors who goes and interviews every single person on the block, finds out what their interests are, what their concerns are. They put it into a database. Everybody gets it. And people have just found ways to connect with all sorts of other folks in their community. And it's been very powerful. And there's many other ways that you've heard about to develop this. The second foundational area we found out is to ensure a just transition by engaging residents in creating healthy, safe, and equitable zero emission. That is, we got to really get down to zero and climate resilient, physical built, economic, and ecological conditions. An article of the UN in 2022 said a just transition policies can create 20 million green jobs. And I'm sure there's more involved with that. And it's because when people get engaged, that most of this work often is created by a single organization or government agency on their own or a private sector, and the public isn't engaged. But they're affected by these practices. And if done poorly and unjustly, it creates more mental health issues and psychosocial issues. But done well, it creates hope for people and empowers people. And this is, in fact, how we can make a great dent on this climate ecosystem biodiversity technology issues. That new technologies implemented from the top down alone cannot solve this problem. There's growing research that shows it. Success, including that New York Times article I just talked about a few minutes ago. We've got to really help residents understand and be involved with this to create success. The third focus that we really going to need to focus on to build universal capacity, population level capacity for transformation resilience is to build universal literacy about mental wellness and resilience. Help everyone become trauma and resilience informed. Help everyone learn self-regulation skills and adversity-based growth skills, presencing and purposing skills. And there was an article in The Guardian back a couple of years ago. Again, I haven't updated the research on these articles, but they're called Humanity's Moment, how we can find meaning in a world that at once heaven and hell. They're talking about the climate emergency in that article. How do we find meaning in this? And that's what purposing is about. But it's very hard to engage in purposing until you've also regulated your emotions and mind and body a little bit first, so you can calm yourself. The fourth area that we identified, and it's not really thought about much in our field, but it is vital. It's really important to regularly engage residents in very specific practices that research and our own experience shows enhance mental wellness and transformation resilience. Laughing often. How do you feel when you found a way to something weird you laugh about? You just feel better. It releases the trauma, the stress in your body. Practicing forgiveness, keep learning, be grateful, caring for the body, finding simple joys. Again, Time Magazine had a whole section on how gratitude can help combat climate change, which is really a great article. I remember it. And lastly, many people will be able to prevent themselves from being traumatized or seriously dysregulated if they practice those other four and get engaged with those other four areas, but there's still going to be a lot of us that are traumatized. So we have to offer ongoing age and culturally appropriate and mostly peer-led, group and community-minded healing opportunities to help people heal. And the reason is peer-led is because many people won't engage if they worry about being stigmatized, if they go to mental health services, but if they're with the peers, they're just doing it together. Oh, we're all in this together. There's nothing wrong with me, etc. And the more you can do it in groups and community-minded efforts, the more chance there are that people will participate. And there's a great article. I remember this one on restorative circles, a powerful tool for community healing. That's just one example, but we've talked about there's somatic healings, there's expressive therapies, et cetera. And clinical treatments will remain important. But again, many of us clinicians will be traumatized. So we even have to engage in those activities. And there's just not enough of us to help everybody engage or get treated. And many of us are in wealthier urban areas, not in lower income and or middle income areas or rural areas. So these community-minded, group and community-minded efforts really run by peers who are trained in how to do this are really going to be critical. So I'm not going to get into all the details, but I just want to say that if we talked about, or you heard from a speaker, or we provided information about a whole bunch of different specific issues during the community practice, the need to prioritize social connections, and those social groups may or may not choose to form a physical hub. The different ways to engage individuals and organizations and organize a resilience coordinating network. There's many different ways. You've heard about them. How to communicate about resilience, climate change, and other hot buttons. We talked about that. We'll talk about that again in a minute. The importance again of using a strength-based and asset-based approach, not a deficit or pathologically based both. How to form a steering committee, fundraising, we talked about different options. how to develop and implement and continually improve multi-systemic strategies, the role of mental health and human service professionals, how to engage young people, the role of government, et cetera. And most importantly is how to care for yourselves as you engage in these activities and engage in others. So we've talked about that. Look back on your at the recordings if you don't remember this information. Look at the documents that we sent out. We'll have information about all these issues. But I just want to reiterate that really our work is about relationships, building and sustaining relationship. This is the most important focus to prevent and heal mental health and psychosocial issues as this climate emergency worsens. Try to create those ongoing social connections across what seem to be typical boundaries in your community. And they got to be horizontal, not just with the executives or other organizations. It's horizontal in our community. And external physical resilience hubs, we just saw a question about that, might or might not be helpful. It really depends on those networks, and they should be choosing them. When they do choose them, they can be very, very helpful. But they might say, oh, you know, I don't want to work over here. We don't trust these folks, or it's too far to go. It's too difficult to get there. We want this church to be our hub, or we want this private company, or we want this public agency, whatever it might be. So you've got to get the groups together, those social support, those multi-sectoral groups, those networks. It's best to choose them, and they're going to be more helpful in that way. So with that as background, there's other material that we didn't cover, but we want to do now 3-person breakout rooms. We're going to try to get it to 3. There might have to be 4. And if you would, choose someone to take notes and then post the answers to the questions that you discuss in chat when you're done. So the first question to talk about is, what 2 or 3 points, you know, whatever the number is, have you really learned? What are the key points you've learned during the community of practice? And how do you intend to utilize that information? And what obstacles exist to utilizing what you learned, and any thoughts on how you can overcome them? So if somebody can keep notes about that, post those in chat afterwards, where they're going to have a broad group discussion about these for much of the rest of the time. We're going to take a little bit longer now and see if we can do these breakout rooms for 15 minutes. So I'm going to turn it back over to Jesse, and we'll go from there. See you in 15.
Thanks, Bob. We are a few folks just left, so I'm just gonna recreate the rooms very quickly. We've got mostly 3. I think that there's one group that's gonna have 4 folks in it, but we'll have 15 minutes. If in these smaller rooms, anybody is in a room that someone else is unable to participate, or no one else is responding, we don't want for you to be alone. Please come back into the main room, and we'll put you in another breakout room. Okay. But we're looking forward to seeing everybody here in about 15 and a half minutes.
Welcome back, everyone. If you took those notes, if you can post what you found, what you discussed, et cetera, in chat, Christian will read those. So please take the time to do that so everybody can see them. But Christian, can you read some that are coming in now, or some of the previous questions that we had earlier in the day, and we can sort of have a discussion about them?
Yeah, let's jump back to a previous question while these new ones come on in. We had a participant ask, how do we address desensitization of the concepts of trauma, resilience, and innovation?
And if anybody would like to offer suggestions, please share those in chat. I'll share my particular view of it, and maybe Jesse and others can share their views, and that is have a conversation with people, the different groups, the individuals, get to know them a bit and see what words resonate with them. What makes sense for them if they're not interested in resilience. Say, how do you really deal with these situations? I know you can deal with these pretty well in some cases. How have you dealt with it? So don't even worry about the terms. Have a conversation, get to know, how people see the world and the words they use, the phrases, the way they describe things, and then talk in that language. So it's really going to be critical. Anybody else has any thoughts? Jesse, you want to offer anything?
But I mean, everything that you just said. The only other thing that I'll add, when it's possible, and it's a big if and when, but there's a great video in movement building that shows that it's not the first person who starts dancing necessarily that gets a group to dance. It's usually the second, because one person alone can do their own thing. But as a group starts to form, you see other people start to join in, and some of that group think that allows for that momentum to build across the bell curve. And so where you can get others to sort of support in conversation what you are talking about and what you are saying, that can be really helpful. Again, that's context dependent and depends on the situation when that's appropriate. So everything that Bob said is very, very true. But when you're able to sort of plant or get someone else to confirm and share their perspectives on it, it can be really helpful in getting other people to start to accept what we're saying if they don't think the same way necessarily.
And again, the terms are not really that's important. You just, if you have people describe what it was like for them when they experienced a particular adverse experience, let them describe it. You don't have to talk about resilience. You don't have to talk about trauma. They'll just share it, and everybody will know what they're just talking about. And they go, yeah, that's how I felt. So I think that's really what's necessary. If anybody else has any thoughts, post that in chat. And Christian, if anything comes up about specific to that question, please share it. And any other questions?
Excellent. Yes, we're getting so much information coming in. It's fantastic. Glad to see we had such productive breakout groups here. A key question I noticed here is, how do we overcome these obstacles? And these obstacles being time is an obstacle that all of us deal with. Figuring out how this fits in and who to talk to talk with and work with and not force it. Parsing through and figuring it out how it fits. So maybe how do we deal with time as an obstacle here in this work?
Well, thanks. And again, if anybody has thoughts about that, please post that in chat. We've talked about trying to just allow everybody on screen, but there's 50 of us here, and it's hard to actually do that in a few minutes. So bear with us that we're not doing that. But please post your comments in chat or your reactions in chat. Time is always an issue. There's just no question for all of us. We're all in this field, especially, we're all pretty right in the edge or at 120%. So you just have to do what you can. And I think we've talked about this a bit. Start small and get more people involved, 2 to 3, 4 people involved. Then you've got more horsepower, so to speak, more capacity. You can divide up some of the work among different people. So the more you can find 1 or 2 or 3 people to start with, a small planning team, and move from there, the better. And that's also how you can help decide who to talk with. Because if you get other people involved, maybe it's over coffee, maybe it's tea, maybe it's lunch, maybe it's a Zoom call or a phone call. And you talk about those questions. They say, well, somebody says, I think that we ought to talk to the city manager or whatever. You might not have that thought, but having a couple other people involved might just generate new ideas of who to talk to and how you can make a difference. Jesse, you want to weigh in at all?
Nothing more on that, I don't think, right now, Bob.
Great. And if anybody else has any comments on that, please post that in chat, any different ways.
Yes, we had a participant discuss another obstacle, and that is getting people engaged, how to bridge the gap between the individual and community. They can be overwhelmed by the enormity of these problems, and we as individuals are not always regulated. Problem being able to articulate things. This intersects with another question we had earlier about how do we not leave behind the doubters and resistors? Do we have any advice on keeping people engaged?
Great questions. First of all, let me back up and say that the answers to all these questions are going to be individual. You're all going to have to sort of figure those out on your own, in your own community, in your own life, your own family. So we're just offering options. But if anybody has an option, especially, let's start with the last one, how to not leave people behind. I think, again, my reaction would be, and this is just my views, given my experience, again, try to connect with them and find out what their life is like, what their interests are, what their concerns are, and then take the discussion from there. And I give this example because it really stands out. Again, when I was working at the Oregon legislature a couple of years back, we had to try to get a bill passed through a committee that was filled with people who are climate deniers, hardcore climate deniers. And I talked with one of them in his office. I just had a meeting, and he was very skeptical when when we first got together. And it turns out he worked with Army folks who were military folks and had seen lots of PTSD. And so we just talked about PTSD and trauma in that sense. He got that. And I said, well, that's what we're sort of experiencing. That's what this bill will do. Will help people deal with that. So once it was on something he could connect with, he supported the bill, and it passed unanimously out of committee. Actually, all the Republicans supported the bill, and it passed out of committee. But it required tapping into where they're at rather than telling them something and your perspective, just engaging with them in that way. Any other thoughts, comments on that? Jesse, anybody? Christy, you want to join in?
Others as well, but like we've been saying for the whole COP, is community is medicine. And so in building community, there is also regulation. Obviously, cycles of dysregulation can also occur across, if there's parallel process. But as we build community through this, it will also help to support that individual regulation as we continue to develop and build and support and promote kind of this universal language and understanding toward what we're trying to do. I see a few other comments in the chat as well.
Yeah, let me say just briefly about self-regulation, and then Christian, if you can read some of those comments. But the more you self-regulate yourself when you're in a discussion, especially when you feel like being angry at somebody, walking out, whatever the reaction might be, the more you can calm yourself, the more chances are the other person you're with will calm themselves. That's co-regulation. Or the more you can talk softly, the more you can take some deep breaths. Don't tell them to take deep breaths. Just take this, I'm going to just take a breath here and talk softly, talk slowly. They're more likely to also calm themselves. That's been my experience. So any other comments in chat there about that, Christian?
And we have a great piece about utilizing what we learned in the sense of starting small and putting these ideas to a meeting and then sharing out the knowledge that is built there. So maybe this iterative process of building knowledge and support around this issue. Bruce Perry's regulate, relate, and reason sequencing is useful as well. We have a comment regarding that. Thank you so much for that. And in regard to another question, we had a participant ask about grant writing resources. I know the grant application process can be a little daunting for folks, myself included. Do we have any advice about seeking grants, and is ITRC able to help?
Well, that's a great question. Thank you for that last one. And again, please post comments or thoughts about that. One thing that many of the resilience coordinating networks do is they work through universities. They go contact university programs and get help. And then students learn how to write grants. So that's one option. So the more you can connect with, and there are often university programs, the faculty, being a former faculty member myself, I know we were always looking for an internship that our students could get involved with. So you might not even have to pay anybody. It takes a little longer because they're learning how to do it. But that's one option. Another option that we've used over the years is to help people for you to connect with other nonprofits that are doing fundraising. See if you can develop a relationship and ask them to, if you can join a grant with them, that you're a small piece of a larger grant. And in doing that, not only possibly raise money, but also learn about the grant writing process. And or put out the word in the community or network. Any volunteers willing to come who've got grant writing experience? So just be as creative as you can, look at all the different options. But many of the local resilience coordinating networks that you've heard from already, and that others that exist, start by in that way, and often they connect with the university or some other nonprofit in that way. Got time for a few more. Go ahead.
We had some suggestions in the chat too. If you have a community foundation, try working
Right.
directly with them in terms of getting grants.
Great.
Somebody endorsing Grant Station membership is worth it. And if you are a nonprofit, you can join TechSoup, and they will give opportunities for subscriptions that are at a lower cost to Grant Station.
Let me say one other word about grants. When I first started writing grants, so this is a long time ago, I would talk to the foundation officer and say, I don't have a lot of experience, but here's the project. And I'd ask them for suggestions on how would I write this to meet your, criteria. So the more you can actually develop a relationship with a foundation officer or a donor, the better off you're likely to be, as opposed to just suddenly out of the blue, they get an application. Sometimes they won't talk with you, but many times they will. If you can develop that relationship, ask them for feedback. Sometimes there was one grantee that we just worked with, and that we sent them a draft, and they gave feedback on a draft before it became final, if you have that relationship. Just a few more. Christy.
Yes, we had a great key point takeaway here. Strengthen places that already exist in the community, especially places that bring people from different walks of life together and enhances culture. Maybe senior centers, daycare, community centers. Remember communication strategies and that different people will need different levels and ways to communicate. Focus on small actions that can strengthen resilience during the first levels of emergencies. So thank you so much for that takeaway.
Right. Let's do one more.
We have a participant say that they learned it's more effective to bring people together for a common purpose and shared experiences. It can grow from there and will be much more diverse and grounded. You can heal in nature and community. Doing the resilience pauses is helpful. And in terms of challenges, we need more help. We feel overwhelmed with the rest of life and busyness of others. We need more time to process our own feelings so we can get past the overwhelm. So loving that self-regulation piece so we're able to partner with the community. Thank you so much. And folks, I just wanted to say out loud here that this is all very fantastic feedback. I'll be compiling this into a document that we can review on the CTIP forum website. So don't feel like we're losing any of this. It'll be up for review.
Great. And thank you all for making those comments. We've got to close up now, but we'll try to post everything. The CTIP forum will be available to you in the long term now, so you'll always have the chance to go back and review a video, read the comments, et cetera, et cetera. So keep that in mind. I want to talk about next steps now with just a few minutes left. Again, the climate forum webpage will be available to you. We're going to try to continue to improve it. And this fall, the ITRC, CTIP, and other co-partners are going to launch what we call the Transformation Resilience Coordinating Network. That's what TRCN stands for, commissioning program. And we want to encourage you, your neighborhood and community group, to think about applying if you're getting it together in that way. And what this will do will help these community coalitions transition through 3 phases. The first phase will be called a prospective Transformation Resilience Coordinating Network. That is, you come together with 3 to 5 other people. You come to us and say, I'd like to form a Transformation Resilience Coordinating Network. You can call it whatever you want. That's what we're calling it. And they would say, okay, we're going to make you a prospective network. And that means we'll provide you with information. You've already learned a lot about it, about how to organize a broader steering committee, how to engage people, et cetera. And if we're running a community practice in, we'll connect you with other people so you can learn more about it. So these are for groups that are just trying to get going, and you'll become a prospective Transformation Resilience Community Network, Coordinating Network. When you've got a steering committee together, that's a broad and diverse steering committee or board, whatever you want to call it, and you are and the group is now interested in really moving forward, We'll move you into what we're calling the emerging transformation resilience coordinating network category and provide technical assistance and other kinds of assistance to you. And in both of those, we'll provide suggestions for fundraising in terms of what can ITRC do about it. And then once a strategy is developed, once this broad, diverse coalition has developed a multi-systemic strategy, so to speak, and has begun to implement it, we'll move you into a commissioned transformation resilience coordinating network, which means you'll get this certificate that was developed by Christy DeRosa that you can use to go out and raise funds, to develop more attention to the program, et cetera. So it's a way to really provide attention to what you're doing, the success, and for us to promote you in our work and the whole coalition's work that's going to be involved with this program. So keep that in mind. With that, I just want to offer 3 keys for each of you. Try to stay present and care for yourself, and try to continually practice those presencing and purposing skills. This is going to be vital, not just in doing the work we've been talking about, but as these conditions change, as the climate ecosystem biodiversity catastrophe sort of accelerates, and it is going to continue to do that. Even if we dramatically reduce emissions, it's going to continue. Take care of yourself. But at the same time, stand up for your purpose. Don't let other people or external conditions deter you. You might have some setbacks. You might need time out. Take that time, but stand up for your purpose. And we were just talking about this with our group during the breakout session. Ride the winds of change towards transformation. Be secure in your resilience as you deal with all these ups and downs that are coming our way. There's going to be profound changes in society that are happening. And ride those and ride them towards transformation. So positive transformation. Just want to leave that with you. One other thing, Christian has posted the final evaluation of the COP in chat. Please take the time to complete that evaluation. It shouldn't take you more than 5 minutes. It's really key for us improving the COPs, the future community practices, and it's also key, this evaluation, to getting future continuing ed credits for groups. If you want more information on a lot of what we talked about, I've written 2 books about these issues. You can find them really anywhere. And I just want to close now. If you would each of you just post 1 word in chat that describes how you feel right now in this final closing session? Just take a few moments. 1 word. What's going on within you right now? And then we'll just read a few and close the session.
Yeah, we have love, connected, inspired again, bloom, creative, inspired, educated, courageous, stimulated, hopeful, energized, hope, thankful, inspired, a lot of inspiration, hopeful, curious, motivated, grateful, connected, ready. A lot of gratitude in the chat as well. Thank you all. Supported, energized, bubbly, glad for the experience, optimistic. Yes, thank you all. It's been such an experience.
Thank you all for doing that, for sharing that, and for being here. Just in closing, again, I want to just reiterate, just keep in mind all but together that community is medicine. We can solve these issues, and we can actually come out better off if we work together at the community level, and then we can pass down healing and transformational resilience rather than just passing down trauma as we've done for so long. So really, that's what we want to focus on, and it sounds like a lot of you are ready to do that. We really appreciate it. So we just want to thank you all for taking the time to be here with us, and we wish you all the best in all of your future endeavors. So thank you all. We hope to be connected in the future, and you'll get more information about the commissioning program soon. We wish you all the best on the work you're doing. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.